The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Welcome to People's View, and we have today Kevin Scully, Representative Kevin Scully, who has been a representative, is now running again for in 2020 for the same seat. Kevin, how's the campaign going?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate this opportunity to be able to reach out to the voters, my friends and neighbors in Ward 6, and also to Greater Nashua and New Hampshire. I think it's very important that people understand who people are in terms of when they're running for an elective office and how they think and how they're going to behave when they go up to Concord and represent other people's interests, our interest, I should say. And so this is a wonderful opportunity. Thank you.
Well, Kevin, tell us about why you're running again.
Well, yeah, all right. Well, thanks. Good question. Honestly, at this point, I think that we've got some real issues ahead of us. As you know, the COVID-19 has swept across the country, and the government's reaction and response to that, in some respects, I felt that the cure was worse than the disease. We have now widespread unemployment. We've had a collapse in the revenues that are coming into government. At the same time, I think we're going to have the need for increased social spending because suddenly we've got a lot of people who are gainfully employed out of work. So I think you need to get the right people up in Concord to be able to chart the best course forward for New Hampshire to bring us back bigger and better than ever, while avoiding what I consider to be the terrible pitfalls and traps of widespread taxes like a sales tax or an income tax.
Well, that's very good objective, but why don't you tell the people about yourself a little bit more? Because you did serve a time, and I felt that you just fell in as a freshman. You were very aggressive, got a few bills through that people didn't even think had any hope, and you did quite well for Nashua, I think, and for the people of Nashua.
Well, thank you. Yes, I did. Well, it's interesting. I mean, I moved up here with my wife in 1986. We've been living in Nashua in Ward 6 for 34 years. I didn't start out as a political activist. That time I was concerned about building a career. We started a family and had 2 children. I was working down in Massachusetts as a licensed site professional doing hazardous waste site investigations and cleanups. My wife was a school teacher down in Lowell. I was very much attracted to Nashua, or New Hampshire rather, in the live free or die philosophy. But most of the part, we were just trying to just do our day-to-day living. As I've got older and we got more involved in our community, and I have to tell you, what I really did find out was it's really when you have children, that's when you really become involved in the community, because now you have skin in the game and you're out there working with other people to try to make things better for your children and theirs. And that's when I really started becoming aware of politics in general and what we were doing. So I spent a good bit of time complaining at the dinner table about things I didn't like. I finally decided I was going to take the leap and try to become involved. Obviously, there are things going on at the national level that in some respects are beyond our ability to control. I decided to start locally, right? The old thing is, think globally, act locally. So I ran for a term in the House of Representatives, and I won. Wow. I mean, I honestly was actually surprised, so it almost felt like, when we walked out of the hospital with our first child, which is, okay, what do I do now? But so I went up there, and I did actually have some agendas. I mean, I knocked on probably 1,500 doors and talked to a lot of people in my first run. And I was made aware of some problems, and I decided I was going to go up there and try to do something. Now, usually what they tell the freshman legislators, basically sit down and shut up, kid. We'll tell you what to do, and, get a couple of terms under your belt, and then you get the feel of this. I will tell you that I would never been one to sit back and just let things go by, especially when I felt I could wade in and try to do something good and positive. Got me in a little bit of trouble with the leadership because they didn't like me. I was, I was a little more assertive, I think, than they preferred, but I still think I did the right things for us in New Hampshire. There is wisdom in saying, hey, kid, don't just jump in there and start mouthing off when you don't know what's going on. I understood what I didn't know. So I made a point of taking a legislative class that was offered by Don Gorman. You might know Don. He was up there. He's a 4-termer. I think actually was one of the founding members of the House Republican Alliance. And he was a libertarian too, but that's just his background. He offered to provide a course to any of the incoming freshman legislators to teach them how it all works, how to behave, how the process works, how to deal with committee work, how to deal with the voting days, when you're on the floor. And I went up there every single day before sessions for an hour and sat with him through the first legislative year to learn the craft. So I think I knew what I didn't know. I just did a lot of extra work to try to become a better legislator. And I used that to good purpose. I was able to get 3 bills passed in my first legislative session. And I think that's highly unusual. And I think, but we weren't just naming bridges. I think I did a couple of things that were really important for not just Nashua, but all of New Hampshire. The first one it was a rollback of some excess legislation, regulatory requirements that was imposed by the Senate. What happened was somebody was overexposed to X-rays, ionizing radiation, and suddenly people said, hey, wait a second, we can't just allow this industry with dealing with ionizing radiation to just do whatever they want. We're going to put in a process of training and licensing. And that sure sounded like a good idea. But what they ended up doing was they said, we're going to expand this to bring in all of imaging technologies, and we're going to force them to work to the same standards that probably are a good idea for X-ray radiation. And what we found out was it was going to have a lot of unintended consequences and hurt a lot of businesses and people providing the services, even like, in the dentist office, going for physical rehabilitation. If people who were checking to see if catheters were correctly positioned when you were getting dialysis, kidney dialysis, suddenly all of these people were going to have this very extensive training and licensing, and that meant there was going to be a shortage of people, vital services would not be able to be provided, and the cost of everything was going to skyrocket. So I went in there with my bill. It's kind of a little funny story. I mean, what I did was I brought it into the committee, executive, what's it, Carl, it's EDNA, executive, the EDA committee, and they took my bill and then they expanded it. The woman who was running that, God bless her, a good friend of mine, decided that she didn't want to just roll this thing back. She was going to roll back everything. So it got passed out of the committee as a much more broad-based bill than I ever intended. And it was sent up to the Senate, and the head of the Senate subcommittee, she was the one who actually put the bill in to begin with. So now the House was telling the Senate, just roll back everything. The House was calling the Senate's baby ugly. And then suddenly I had to go up and talk to the Senate, the lady in charge of the committee, saying, please, please, please don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's fix this thing. Let's do it right. I convinced her. She amended it. I brought it back to the House. I talked to the head of that committee saying, please, I know you wanted to do more, but can we please get this passed because it's very important? And she agreed, and we got that first bill through. So, I mean, I really learned I had to work both houses, both the House and the Senate. And that really, helped me a lot when I went after my big win, the big fish I landed, which was rolling back the excess interest charges that were being placed on late property tax payments. So that one was the big fight, Carl. And I know you were there for that. And it was amazing. I went in and I made the initial presentation to the House Committee, Municipal and County Government. And they were all actually very, how would one say it, sympathetic. Everybody was saying, hey, this is a really good idea. And then all the cities and towns showed up in the New Hampshire Municipal Association. And that's when I found out very quickly those folks were addicted to other people's money. So then, and even here in Nashua, I mean, we had zero borrowing costs in Nashua, but Nashua was taking in $900,000 a year from the poor folks who fell behind on payments. And they didn't want to give up that free money. So when they got done testifying, the House Committee closed the doors and they all decided, listen, we've got to act as one to make sure we kind of cover each other. And that thing got voted down 23-0. I was absolutely devastated. I was sitting out in the hall and I'm saying, my God, what just happened? This is such a good idea. It's the right thing to do. And one of the state reps walked out, a man I like and respect, David Bates. I think you know him. And he said to me, he goes, you want to fight this? And I thought about it for a second. And I said, yes, I do. So he helped me and John Burt and some other ones. And I got help from the Democrat side of the aisle, too. We took this to the floor. We had a floor fight. We got the recommendation of the committee flipped on the floor and passed through the House. And then I went up and I started the hard work in the Senate. And I talked to 23 of the 24 senators about this bill. One senator, Lou D'Alessandro, refused to meet with me. I tried twice. He refused to meet with me. But all of the 23 senators gave me their time. I made my case. I even pointed out to the Democrats that this thing was actually in compliant with their own party platform, which is to make sure that we cut down on unnecessary home foreclosures. So after I did the work in terms of walking the halls and talking to the senators, that thing got passed in the Senate by a voice vote. And it was only one dissenting voice I heard. I think I know who that was. But basically 23 senators said yes. And the bill that nobody said could be passed got passed. And if you look at your income tax bills, when they come in now, in terms of late interest payments, it used to say 12%. Now it says 8%.
Very good. That it was a big thing for you to do because, as you said, you were a freshman and you handle it like an old pro, so that you had plenty of the proper things to do, and you overcame a 20-0 committee report initially. Right.
So that was, it's not done. So, I guess the old saying is I was so inexperienced and stupid, I didn't know what I couldn't do. So I just went ahead and did it.
But you did it the right way, too. You didn't make a fool of yourself or anything like that most freshmen really worry about. You were comfortable with your presentation and you had the facts that you needed. Your constituents ought to be proud of you.
Well, I'd like to think so. Of course, honestly, I'll be honest, I was disappointed when I didn't win re-election because I felt I had gone up there and made a real difference and made things better for everybody in my district and in the city and in the state. It really was a wave election. I think there was a lot of sentiment out there. I'm afraid people got sold on the idea that the Orange Man was bad, and unfortunately it rolled downhill to the folks at the state level tickets. I'm hoping the people of New Hampshire have seen what has happened up in Concord in the last 2 years of Democrat control, and it has not been good. It has not been productive. That doesn't mean I won't work with anybody who's up there. I have and I will. But I want to make sure that we have the right people up there taking the lead and setting the agenda to bring Nashua back and New Hampshire back.
And we need to have a mixed group on representing Nashua. You can't just have all one party. It doesn't work out. I think that you you will be a very good representative to have up there and to fight for the good values that basically and support the governor. The governor's doing a good job, and I think you would be able to support him very well, and we get something done.
Well, I will tell you, my philosophy is I will work with anybody to do good. I will work with nobody to do bad, and that includes members of my own party. As long as they're doing this, I think the governor. I know he was relying on the health officials when he made some of his decisions. I think hindsight being 2020, I do feel like we went too far in terms of shutting down the businesses here. I do want to get them opened up as quickly as possible, but we do have a long-term consequence of what was done, and that was the collapse of the revenue stream. We're going to have to be very careful about how we do this coming back, so we don't make mistakes that will haunt us forever. As I said, like putting in an income tax or a sales tax.
Right. What other issues are you concerned with, or your people in Ward 6 are concerned about?
Well, I think that, people obviously would like to get their fair share of what is being collected at the state level and distributed to the cities and the towns. I assure the residents of Ward 6 in Nashua, I will be in there making sure that we get what we deserve. The other issue is that I really do think that we need to further reform education. I want to give the children and parents, specifically mostly the parents because they're the decision makers, I want to give them as much flexibility as possible in deciding the best path forward for their children. One size does not fit all, and I don't want an educational industrial complex, which is really what we have right now, forcing everybody into one box and giving them only one choice. I think the best way that we can, again, that may be the right choice for people. I'm not saying don't send your children to public school, but I want it to be a choice that you have. And the best way we can do that is to take as much of the revenue as we collect for education and give that or empower the parents to decide where that they want that to be spent, whether it's to a charter school or even a private school. I care about the parents. I care about the children. That's what this is all about.
Very good. So those are the education is going to be one of them. Taxes are going to be another thing that you are concerned about. Are you thinking of the same committee that you were on last time?
Well, I think I'm going to ask to be on the Judicial Committee. I mean, that's kind of a funny joke, too, because, as I said, I ran afoul of the then Speaker Jasper because I didn't do what he told me he wanted me to do. And I'm sorry. I will not listen to anybody except my constituents and my own conscience. And I'm not going to do what I think is the wrong thing just because somebody wants me to. I actually was punished, as you know, Carl, because of the fact I defied the speaker. He pulled me off the committee I was very qualified for, which was the Environment Committee. I've been in the environmental cleanup business for 30 years, and he put me on Children and Family Law as a punishment. You know something? That was his power. It was within his power to do that. So be it. I went to that committee and I did the best job I could because I felt that way I was still serving, even though it wasn't the optimal place for me. I did the best job I could. And I think you could ask anybody on that committee. I showed up all the time. I did the work. I try to do the right things for New Hampshire there.
Well, what did you, why are you going to the Justice Committee? Why would you want to go there?
On judiciary? Well, for me, I honestly, the big issue I would like to take on here is I want to stop abortion right up to the moment of birth. I think that's intrinsically evil. And we're literally talking about viable children who, abortion is a surgical procedure. A C-section is a surgical procedure. If the child can live outside the mother's body, that child should be given the recognition of personhood and constitutional rights of protection that we all enjoy, and that child should be given life. And we'll take care of that child. So I'm not just saying to the mother, your child has to be born, we're going to throw you to the wolves. That's not the case. But let's start doing the right thing here, and that is to give the recognition of personhood to viable children and to bring them into the world and give them the same protections you and I enjoy under the Constitution.
Okay, very good. So that would be the right committee for you and everything like that. So why are you the best person suited for Ward 6 to represent Ward 6?
Well, again, I think we talked about this a little bit, but I have demonstrated, well, one thing, I showed up. You can't be a representative if you're not there to represent. And I had 100% attendance record in the first year. I wasn't there for every vote in the second year. On one particular day, it was because I had to be in the Senate to present my bill to the Senate. They weren't supposed to schedule those hearings on our voting day. They went ahead and did it. I was torn, but I felt I needed to go to the Senate to, again, be the representative. So I missed a few votes, but I think my voting record, even in the second year, was 95+%. So I show up and represent the people who elect me. I demonstrated that I am successful. I'm not sure, Carl. Honestly, I know of no other person who was able to do what I did in my first term in terms of getting significant legislation passed in New Hampshire. By the way, the other bill I got passed was to put in a drug and alcohol treatment program for registered nurses. They didn't have one. There was one for doctors and dentists and veterinaries.
They didn't have.
I mean, I said, what's wrong with our nurses? Why aren't we giving them the same type of help and consideration that we give to doctors? So there were 30,000 registered nurses here in New Hampshire. They now have a drug and alcohol treatment program because of the work I did when I was up there. So I did some real good for a lot of people. I worked with everybody. I worked with Senator Feltus, who's now, as you know, running for governor on the Democrat side. I worked with him to get that interest rate bill passed. Senator Susie, too. I will work, again, I was up in the other house. They know me by name, which is good. The governor knows me by name. I mean, in terms of, I've worked with him. I've been in his office talking to him about issues. I'm not afraid to spend the time necessary up there in the halls of power to make sure that the right things are being done for the citizens here in Ward 6, in Nashua, and all across New Hampshire. I think I got my head screwed on straight. I understand the terrible power that government is and that I would not use it unless it's absolutely necessary. But when it's the right thing to do, I'll do it.
Very good. It sounds like they can't go wrong by voting for you. You've been active. You've shown you can do it. And you're better than people that have been there many terms. So I think it's obvious, but how are you going to make your message clear to your constituents? Do you need some help in your campaign? You want to put a phone number down or something that people could call you and make donations to, because you're not getting a big pay up there, as you know.
I know, it's $100 a year. I always joke that I'm running again because the money's too good.
Yeah.
Can't walk away from $100, well, actually, that
plus mileage.
Yeah, that's plus mileage. I would say that I will need some help. I do have a Facebook page up for those who are on Facebook. You can look for me, Kevin Scully, State Representative Candidate, Ward 6. I do post. I like the Nashua Scoop, which is a local Facebook page that's got about 6,000 members. You'll be seeing me there. I will have a place to make donations, it's not tens of thousands of dollars, but, cost money for signs, cost money for the palm cards, do mailings. So people who think that I can represent them well and they're interested, and I can, I'll be looking for them to perhaps help me. And you know something, you don't even have to give money. You can make some phone calls for me. I mean, in terms of we need to get the vote out. We need to get people engaged, folks who really care about their future and the future of their children. And that's what I'm looking at too, is, you and I are both fathers. We've got skin in the game. I want to make sure this stays the wonderful, exceptional place that it is. I want to keep it live free or die. And actually what I would say is I want to make it live free and thrive. That's what I want us to all do, to be able to thrive here and continue to thrive in New Hampshire.
Very good. That sounds like a good slogan for you to have, and I hope the best for you. Is there any last other words that you want to say before we close?
Well, again, please find my Facebook page. Look at what I've done. I want you to look at the attendance records of the people who are running for this office too, because I don't think it's right for somebody to ask to be, their representative and not show up for work.
Right.
I will do that. A matter of fact, I'm just retiring now after my 35 years doing environmental cleanups. I'll have even more time to spend up there to do the business of Ward 6, Nashua, and New Hampshire. I'll be there for you. I kept every promise I made in my first term. I promise you, if you elect me, I'll keep my promises again to you. And you'll never open up that paper and say, he did what? I'll always do the right thing for you.
We're looking forward to some of the things that you will be able to do up there, because I know you'll be a success. So
thanks, Carl. And you've been a wonderful help to me and mentor as well. I really appreciate the time you've given me when I was up there in my first term. I always valued your counsel. And by the way, I'm going to still keep calling you, even if you're not up there, because you don't want an experience like yours just to go to waste.
Well, I think my 4 terms were enough, but I think that you'll do well up there. And any help I can give you, I will. So we'll see you again after the primary, get you an update, and we'll talk a little bit more. So
okay, that sounds great. Thank you for the time.
Okay, thank you.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.